that I picked up over the past year. We're going to talk about data-driven UMG. So I guess what I'll start with, let me just show my screen. I have a simple project, but just to really show something quickly, I'm going to show my Epic Mega Jam game. So how I use UMG, or sorry, data tables in this is my car selector. It is, I mean, the car dropping there, that's in world, but the UMG is driven by the data. You can see the price changing. So what I'm doing is I'm just iterating through a structure, and then I'm binding that information to the screen. So I'm not going to go through the source code of this app, and I'm not going to distribute this app because I've released it as an actual product. Plus, I have third-party assets that I've purchased. So what I have here is a sample or an empty project I've created. So what I've done is kind of spec'd out all the basic stuff that doesn't really need, you don't need me to go through. So if you play, we have Hello World, we have UMG on the screen. Before I get into it, I should mention, you'll see on the bottom right, I have the chat, but I also have on the bottom right, I'm accepting donations for to help me develop my main game, Zombie Town. I want to buy the minigun animation pack off of the Unreal Marketplace. It's $50. So if anything I post here helps you, I definitely appreciate some support back. But anyways, we'll get back to it. So the very first thing we should probably get into is structures. So if you want to have data in your app, you need to contain it somewhere, like I guess a database. Obviously if you know database programming, but if you're not familiar with it, it's a container of rows of information, like Excel. So I'm not going to jump right in and go to where is it? It's in miscellaneous. The data table. That's, I guess, our database. But first, we need to create our actual structure. So I'll do that here. So I guess for the example here, I'll make a car database. So what I'm going to do is create a collection of car information, and then in UMG I'm going to create a way to scroll through it and then load an individual record. So basically how I'm tying data in UMG together is, how do you go from a data source, creating multiple UMG items, and then using those UMG items to load other UMG items with your data. So it's just a mix of a lot of simple concepts that you may have seen from a lot of other tutorials. So I'm just going to call it Structs car. I'm not following the naming conventions that are popular. This is just kind of how I do it in my own crazy ways. So we're going to make it so the car has a name. The car has, I don't know, hit points. And then I'll do something fancy like I would say texture, but I don't have any texture, so I'll say material. And then I can create just some, you know, whatever materials with static colors. And then we'll make this like that. So what I'll do is I'll go on my controller and I'll create I'll just create a structure. So what I'm doing right now is pretty much how I was doing it before. I think I started this before DataTables actually came out. I think it was like 4.8 or something. They became more common in Blueprint. But this is how I used to do it, is I'd have an array in my controller, and then if I wanted to have my data structure, you know, I'd have car 1, I'd have car 2, I'd have car 3, you know, I'd set my data. This is if it's a read-only data source, this isn't really a good way to do that. For the problem of using the default editor to manage your data set is cumbersome. Using Blueprint to manage your data set is terrible, which is what I was doing. But I'll go to the advantages of why you want to use the data table system itself later. But this is just in the most basic way of having data in your app. And we could build a whole app around this. And even if you want to have more of a dynamic data set, so it's like if you buy cars and sell cars, you want to have a dynamic data collection. So you probably would want to use something like this. But using the data tables where we're eventually going to take this. So what I'll do next is I'll actually create one. I don't really have a plan or a schedule for this. I'm just going to whip something up in the next hour. So bear with me here. I hope this is valuable to you. So we'll call this DB cars. Again, probably not what you want to name it. So I'm going to add 3 rows. The row name is interesting, and if I have enough time, I'll get into how I use enumerations to create almost indexes for your records. But for now, I'm just going to start with simple rows, and then we'll just use the names manually. So I'll just call this car1, 10 hit points. I'll call it car1 here. Car2, 20 hit points. Car2, and then car3, 30 hit points. I would have had this set up. I should probably start creating folders because this could start getting messy. I would have liked to have this set up beforehand, but so I'll just say red, pink, I guess, whatever. Going quick here. Actually, taking a little bit of time out of my main dev to work on this. Okay, so blue, really quickly put this to blue, green, all right. So in my database, I'm just going to wire up random colors to each one, just so we can have some distinction in our UMG when we iterate through them. I mean, we will have names and numbers changing, but kind of nice to have something else. So hypothetically here, we're going to build like a show me all page, and then what we're going to do is you want to click on one and then you want to load that one. So what I'm going to do now is in my UMG main here, we need to put them in a collection or a container. So I like using scroll boxes, but there is also another one that I started using lately, wrap box, which is kind of cool. Might be a little bit better for this environment. I'll put a wrap box right here. So now the next thing is, what are we going to put in this wrap box? We have to actually create a sub UMG widget. Maybe I'll create a directory here for all my UMG stuff. And what I'll do is create another UMG thing. We'll call it a UMG car lists item. And this is what we're going to put multiple ones into the main collection. So what we're going to want to do is probably make it a button, and then text. This is the most basic way of doing it. I'll put that in there. Call this button load. The text will be driven from the data. Now, it's a little confusing for when you want to put this in something else because this is set to be kind of a full screen item. What I like to do for my widgets is go custom, and then I kind of go, well, I want it to be 300 wide, 150. So what I could do is make my widget a button in of itself. And maybe I'm going to, jump into a little more advanced stuff here, but what I like to do right away is I wrap everything, especially if I'm binding it to another kind of container, I wrap it with a size box. And then I'll say width and height override. Or usually I go min and max, but I'll just do this. 300, 150. Because setting your preview to a size doesn't mean that if you stick this somewhere, it will be that size. So I'm just scrolling up here, make sure I'm not saying anything. So what that does is that says if you stick me inside a collection, this is how big I'd like to be. So I'm going to go back to my UMG main, and we could start going right into code and trying to go through our database, but really the best way to test this stuff is you just drop it into your collection just to see how it binds manually, and you'll see that it's adhering to the parameters I just set up. So when I loop through my stuff, it's going to look like this. So I'll just delete them all out. So we've proved that out. Because I want it to go into this wrap box, I'm going to give it a name. WB cars, and because I need to access it in Blueprint, I'm going to make it a variable. So what I'm going to do is on the event construct of this Blueprint widget, this is where I'm going to bind this. I think I'm going to move that in the stream to on a button so we can go through maybe refreshing or just some other considerations. So what I want to do is go through this database we've made. We have 3 items. I want this data to be essentially these things, what I just dragged in there. So what I'm going to do is in this event here, data name, yeah. So get data table row names is what we want to do, and we're going to pick our database. The other one is get data row. Sorry, I just had to drink some water there. So this get data row is actually the meat and potatoes here, and this actually pulls out, oh yeah, I have to set my database. This actually pulls out the data. No, not that one. There we go. This pulls out the data, and then here is like where you can pick the name. But what we need to do is actually get the names, and that's this one. So you get all, do a for each. So this is essentially querying our data store. We're going to wire this name in here. And then we have our data. So this is going to be a few more steps, but we have our data. I mean, I could do a little example where I print this out and we can be like, yay, we have the data. But this is really about getting the data into UMG. So what we want to do is go create widget. We want to find the car widget I just made. Really simple. What we're going to just do is create the widget and add it to our panel. So this isn't really going to be anything. It's just like it's all going to say text block. Probably free up some real estate here. What? Yes, do your thing. let's move all this stuff we're working on up to the front here. All right, so when the UMG widget is created, iterate through the database and create these 3 blocks. So you can't really tell that it's happened because, I mean, there's no distinction between any of them. So what I like to do is create a function. We'll call this init. And how are we going to init it? One thing is are we going to pass in all the parameters? Or what I like to do is pass in the structure itself. So the structure in our database, if we pass all of that in, then the widget itself can take care of binding or what it's going to do with that data. So what I like to do is to promote it to a variable within your widget. We could just call this data. Now what this lets us do is we have the data, we have it in memory. So we could just be really basic here and just go text label as a variable. I mean, this is how I used to do it. I've actually been going through Michael Aller's generic shooter project, and I actually picked this technique up a week or 2 ago, but he actually uses data binding to do this. So the basic way is to go get text label, set text, and then you can break your struct out. And then you can stick that in there, and we'll just run this first, but I'll show you what another way is after that. Yeah, but now we need to actually call that. So if I was to run it, it's not actually going to change because we still need to pass that data into our widget. So we've created it. What we're now going to do is call this new init that we've created. And we're going to pass the data in there. And we don't even need to deal with the struct at this level. And now in our init, we just pull that data and we stick it in the text box. So if I run this, car1, car2, car3. But like I said, that's not really, I mean, it works, but after seeing how Michael Aller does it, it makes sense to me. It's a way better way of doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. And then for this text label here, you can go down for the text, and what you can do is go bind, create a binding. And what that does is it creates a function that makes sure your data is synchronized to that control. So I'm going to call this label bind. I don't know if that's a good way to call it. And what I'm going to do is do that assignment here. And I know this might seem like splitting hairs at this level. It's like, well, you're pretty much doing the exact same thing. But the real kind of, right, just want to make sure that works correctly and I'm not. Yeah, okay. So why am I doing it this way as opposed to just assigning it? The real situation comes when you want to update things, and you can just do it the other way. Like every time your data changes, you can create some kind of way of going in and getting and setting the data. But the problem is when you get really more and more complicated, you have to do it all over the place, and when things change, you have to find all the places you did it. So this is kind of a nice way to unify how this works. I'm kind of new to this, but I assume there is a cost to this. I don't know if this if it happens every frame or if it detects if there's changes, but I really kind of think it does happen often, and that's why these invalidation boxes were created. Because when you do it yourself, you set when you do it, but if it's binding, it might happen a lot. So, I mean, this is where I'm a little unsure of what I'm saying, but maybe make sure you don't do anything too complicated in your binding. I could be wrong. It could be all optimized away. But so we have our data. So that's us creating multiple instances. That's us passing data into it. I mean, we could get a little more fancy here. And this is where I haven't bound materials before, so this might not go right. So background, style, normal. Can you not bind? Yeah, you can. I've done this before. What I want to do is just bind that color I have into my image. Oh, well, whatever. We'll just do that the cheap way. Init. Get my button. Background. Oh, it's a struct. Oh well, I'll just do this in the next thing I'm gonna build. Sorry, I know I should have a plan and be a little more direct to what I'm gonna do here. All right, so when we click it, what does that mean? You know, like how do you work with it now that you have it here? How do I get my mouse control back? There we go. So what I like to do is I use what's called event dispatchers. And I'm probably going to describe this incorrectly, but I basically call them, or consider them as events, but going the other way. So I mean, a lot of what you're doing is subscribing to events like begin, play, tick. But what this means is you get to create an event to be subscribed by something else. So what I'm going to do, I'm in my list item here. When you click the item, unclicked, what I'm going to do is call this. And I could go through a whole thing where I subscribe and then I can have some like hello world, but really what you want to do is if you're clicking it, you need to let the owner of what I'm currently put in, what this little item is, you need to tell it what's been clicked. So I'm just going to get right to that, and we're going to say this is the data that's been clicked on. Oh yeah, you have to, some Unreal fun there. So I'm going to pass the full data structure. Oh, it's about 23 minutes in. I might not actually have time to get into what I want to get into. But yeah, so I'll pass the data into my cards, and then I'll pass the data out back to my main page, and we'll have some kind of big page pop up. This isn't 100% how I do it in my stuff, but I'll get this working first before we start optimizing. So in the binding, we go through our database, we create the cards, we add them to the thing, and then we initialize the data. But now these cards, they throw events. So what we need to do is actually bind or subscribe to the events that these cards could potentially call. So we pull out here, type bind, and this is actually the event I just created. If you drag this out, add custom event, yeah, it's really nice. It'll actually create the event and it'll create the correct signature. And we'll call this card clicked, probably bad name. Whatever, we'll print string, let's do it. And we'll, no, all right, break this out. And we'll throw this in there. Come on, you. I'm like so bad with wiring, I always miss. And I swear. So yeah, we'll do that. Car 2, car 3. So we've created our kind of message pump, is if you want to call it. I don't know. So But if you're clicking on something when you want to buy, usually you want to go somewhere or whatever. So what I'm going to do is create another UMG widget, and I'm going to call this UMG car full item. I mean, name it what you want to name your thing. And what we'll do is make this like a full page kind of thing. And we're going to have a text to show the name. Then we're going to have a text to show the hit points, and then I'll have an image to show the color. Because here you can go material. Yeah, and I can bind it too, which is probably better. And I'll do it like this, even though this isn't a good way to line up your content. Call this text name. And if you use binding, you don't even need to create a variable, which will make your variable list a little cleaner. XHP image color. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to create an init here in my functions. And that's where I'm going to pass in, just like in my line card item, my struct, my car struct. And I'm going to put it to a variable as well. I'll call this data. Save compile. I'm going to go back to my UMG main, go to my designer. My palette here, I'm going to find my car full. I'm going to add it to my canvas. I'm going to just make it go full screen. I'm going to make the Z order go up, or Z order, whatever you call it, just so when it loads, it actually loads and it covers the whole page. So, yeah. Oh, hey, Nexus. Sorry, my coffee's getting cold. I know I could probably find a less noisy way of muting my mic, but whatever. So we'll call this J full. That's what I like to name. It's a variable. I'm going to make it collapsed by default, and then I'm actually going to make it invisible here so I can work with my stuff and not have to worry about it. But also, just if I hit play and I click it, it's still doing it, but you can't see my card. So my main here. What I'm going to do is, because I have my OBJ full, I'm going to go init, and then I'm going to pass the data in instead of print string it to prove that actually someone know what I'm talking about. So I'm passing the data in, but that's not everything that I need to do because it's actually hidden. I need to go set visibility. I'm sure there's a slicker way. You can actually do binding with your visibility, but we'll just do this for now. So Car2 full screen, but I haven't bound anything yet, so it just pulls up that information. So what I'm going to do to make this a little less jarring is just put an image in my background here, and I'll call this image background full screen. I'm going to make everything here Z order 1, so it's on top of it. But I'm also going to make this black. So it's like a page. It's loading up. And then I'm going to bind. Yeah, that's it. I'll bind my stuff. So text. Create my binding. Name bind. I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to name stuff, which is bad. I should just know. I should just follow a celebrated design pattern, but I'm a little snowflake, so I don't. Okay, so I'm binding the name. I'm going to bind HP. Call this HP bind. Get my data, break it out. Oh, that's another reason why binding is pretty cool, is you can set your binding style. So like I'm turning an integer into text, and there's various ways to do that. But if I configure that here, and I do it in one place one time, whereas versus if I do it in code, I have to do this every time. And I've had bugs in my game where when I wasn't doing it this way, and I had it all over the place, I'd change it in one spot, but then it'd be broken somewhere else. So this is a nice pattern to follow. And then I'm going to bind this color. Create binding. Color. Not get, bind. Same dealie. Break. I think you could even go split, and you could have it like that too if you wanted. Oh, it's a material. How do you... Yeah, see, this is me stepping out of my comfort zone here. Image. Yeah, maybe I have to do it in the init. Image color. Brush from texture. Brush from material. I'm not sure if you can bind this, but I'll just do this and see if this works. It's not. Oh, I think because I have the binding as well. That's screwing it all up. So we'll delete that. And if this doesn't work, I'll move on. I mean, I'm just covering basics here. Yeah, the color doesn't work. That was, I should have made some dumb like bitmaps and imported them. And maybe when I upload this to GitHub, I'll clean that up. So to make it so we can traverse this a bit easier, I'm going to just add a bit more to what I normally do. I'm going to put a button here that's going to close this. I'll call it button close. And just to make this work. What I'm doing is just I'm making sure that it sticks in the top right of the screen, depending on the size. So this is going to be my close button. And then when you click it, I'm going to create another dispatcher. Oh, this one doesn't even have one yet. That's right. I'm just going to call it close. So when you click close, I'm going to call the dispatcher close. So that in my UMG main, I have my widget here. I'm going to subscribe to close. I know I'm going really fast. I wish I could really like make a course and draw this out, but that's why I'm going to give the source so you can rewatch this video and you can pull this apart. But anyways, my widget that I'm doing to be my full page item, it has an event that you can just wire up using the editor. And whenever that closes call, you can go set visibility to collapsed. So that returns it to its initial state. So all that really lets us do is when I load up car 1, I can close it. I can load up car 2. So, okay, oh, yeah, repetition. Cool. Yeah, hey, man, if you want to learn this stuff, I'll definitely, ask me questions and I'll, expand on it. Yeah, okay, so we're 35 minutes in. I'm not sure how much time I wanted to spend on this, but I think I've proven the base technique. So you have your list of items, and then you can load it into an item, and then you can bind your data. So you could probably create some, I don't know what you'd like, maybe like in your game, if you had like like one of those information encyclopedias in your game, you could have all your information in there. I have another kind of concept that I wanted to go with, using enumerations as kind of a primary key of your data, so that if you were to create, like say, a shopping cart, or if I was to buy these cars, you wouldn't pass around the whole data structure. You'd pass around the enumeration, and then use that enumeration to access single items within your data table. But I think I'll see how the reception for this tutorial is, if it gets some likes and views. And much like the UMG chat demo I made last year, I'll expand on that if this gets any more attention, or if people want to see more about it. But I'll post this on GitHub. This video will be on my YouTube. And if anyone has any questions right now, I'll probably hang out for another few minutes. But if not, I'll probably just shut this down and put this on GitHub. I hope this was helpful for people. I've seen a couple questions in the forums of people asking how to do this, and I mean, I myself had to learn this kind of the hard way, and through the help of guys like Michael Aller, and Alan Noon is actually the one who on Twitter, he was talking about using data tables to store your data. Yeah, before I shut the stream down, if there's, let some questions come in, but if not, well, one thing I'll do is I'll talk about why data tables are a better way to store your static information. And one of my favorite things of them is this editor is a lot, number one, better to use than the default editor in your Blueprint variable management. It's a lot better than using Blueprint itself to manage your data. I actually did that for a little bit. But one of the most powerful things I find is you can export your data as JSON. Let's put it right to my desktop. I'll call this cardb.json. Where is it? It's on another screen, isn't it? Hold on here. Thanks, Windows. Totally messing me up for no reason. Did I not save that as to my desktop? So where's desktop? There we go. I'm going to open this in Notepad, just because if my Notepad++ opens up, I probably have a ton of stuff I shouldn't be streaming there. So this puts it into a text file where you can edit it, and you can use as much as this editor is pretty sweet. It does have a lot of limitations, and I mean, using Notepad is a good example. Using Notepad++ lets you edit the data easier, in an easier way. But you can also put it to CSV as well, or you could put this into a database if you were to write a program. I actually, for my zombie game, I wrote some JavaScript to help me manage the data, because I have some constraints on my data. It makes it way easier to edit it in my special tools. So we could change our, if you're balancing your data, you realize this is the better way to do it. You can save your JSON file. And then in your database editor, you can go re-import, desktop, pick your thing. And we have our new, oh, oh yeah. That didn't work right, because that's actually, it's not a bug. I did something really dumb. I named my struct. Yeah, what you don't ever want to do is name a column name, because when I re-imported it, it figured it would have brought my data in. Yeah, I did something wrong here. Anyways, I'll fix this up for when I put it in source control and I take it over in the next tutorial if I make one. But yeah, live demo. Don't name a column name, because it when you re-import it, this is actually name right here. So it screwed up my keys. So it's this NSLOC text. It pulled the data from here into my key name, which is bad. Yeah, is there another point I had on that? I think I did. Oh well, I think that's it for now. I hope this helps. Yeah, shutting her down. Thanks for watching.